to recap, we've learned a little bit about the desktop. We've learned how to create a new panel, create and add a applet, edit the menu, select the lock screen, power, log off button, and power, as well as how to create a screensaver. The Linux file system is very similar to that of Windows. The only difference being is the hard drives are not called C and D and so on and so forth. They're called something different. So if I click on the menu function and I type in disk, D-I-S-K, I'm going to be presented with my hard drive that I've set up. Now notice the device name is DEVSDA1. So that is how the Linux file systems are actually named. SDA1, SBA1, SDA0, 1, 2, so on and so forth. So the other similarity between Windows and Linux is that your file system is similar to that as well. If I click on menu and I click on files, you see that we have desktop, desktop, documents, downloads. Now what you don't know is I've set up a folder. I've named a folder called desktop. Notice the difference here. You have the capital D versus the lowercase d. The reason that is okay in Linux is because it's case sensitive, unlike Windows, which is not case sensitive. So those are the other two things that are different. Accessing the file system is a little different than that in, say, Windows. For instance, we can go through command line to view a lot of our directories. So if we start and click on the menu function here, and then find our terminal, we click on terminal, and then we log in. So the command to get into the root directory, or the root mode of basically the local run administrator mode, similar to that of Windows, is the command sudo sudo space dash s. Enter. We have to put in the password that we set up. For instance, this could have been when you initially set up the computer, you would put this password in here. This allows us to view, edit, update the computer itself. You'll notice the difference here. When you have the dollar noted, you'll notice that is different, meaning you're just in regular user mode. However, when you see the pound symbol, you notice you are in the actual administrative or sudo mode. While I'm here, I'm going to give myself the opportunity to actually edit the look and feel of the command here. So I'm going to click on edit, go to preferences. I'm going to change the color to maybe perhaps that of a green, maybe a dark green. And then my text size, I'm going to change that to say from 80 to maybe 150. My column size, I'm going to change that to say 30 and push close. I'm not happy with that size, so I'm going to change the font as well. So I'm going to click on edit again, click on preferences, and I'm going to select the custom font, followed by the icon there, and then just move up the font size maybe to say 30. That's fine there. So my font now, my screen is quite larger. So now I can continue on with what I was doing. Close the profile settings here. So there's two trains of thought here. You have a directory and a subdirectory in Linux. Now the directories are home, Linux Mint, or Linux course. So if we want to go back to our home directory or our root directory, we're going to type in cd and then slash. And that's going to back us up one. So we type ls. Now we know we're in the root directory because we type in the command pwd, primary working directory. We push enter. We know that we're in this directory. You see the slash. Anytime you see the slash, that means you're in the root of the file system, or the directory, root directory. So you have subdirectories. So some of the subdirectories I'll go over a little bit. So if you type ls, which the command ls stands for listing, this is your list. ls, enter. And you're presented with a couple things. We're going to go left to right. First of all, the bin directory, binary directory. So the binary directory, it contains executable programs that required when your Linux Mint computer boots up. These are the programs that execute commands, basic commands, and this is roughly the same thing as what you might call your C Windows. So inside the bin directory, I'll just type cd and then bin, go into the bin directory. So now if I type in ls, it's going to show me several files. Type ls, notice there's plenty of files there listed. So I'm going to show you a different directory. cd backslash, what directory am I in? pwd. Okay, I'm in the root directory. I'm going to type ls again, which is list. I'm then going to go to my boot. So I'm going to type cd boot. Okay, cd boot. So my boot directory contains files that when my Linux Mint computer boots up, I need some Linux kernel files. Kernel files are like what they might call your INI files or your registry files. You could call it that basically. The kernel essentially controls all the hard devices connected to your computer, supports multiple programs, and that run currently and that share resources from the hardware. So if I type ls, these are the list of boot files, if you will, that are being run on this computer when it boots up into kernel mode. So I go back again, cd backslash, I'm going back one more, pwd, what directory am I in? The root directory. I'm going to type in ls one more. And next one I'm going to focus on is the cd-rom. cd-rom is the same thing as you would say for Windows. This essentially is if you put a CD in, this is it's gonna show up here, and you're gonna be able to command or go into it essentially. So if you type in change directory and then type in cd-rom, enter, ls. Of course, there's nothing in there because we would see something if it's listed there. But this is the same thing exactly as what you might call for Windows as in the cd-rom. Change directory, go back one more into my root folder, pwd, goes back into my root directory. Now I'm going to tell you about ls and the device. So this is dev. So what a lot of times you'll see bin and dev, etc. etc. Device, dev stands for device. The device contains the file entries that represents devices that are attached to the system, such as maybe a webcam or a USB mouse, something like this. These also allow programs to access the device driver. So essentially, it's something similar to that of Windows, where you have device drivers. Essentially, is here. Now, this also goes for what you would call hard drives, disk hard drives. So before, when we had our CD-ROM, or rather our computer disk here, if we click on net, our menu, and then we just find disk again, D-I-S-K, click on disks. You'll notice here that you have the 54 gig hard drive essentially. The device itself is called dev device SD1. This allows that hard drive to interact or connect with the Linux Mint server. The command is a little different when getting into the CD-ROMs or the hard drives of it. So if we change directory into that file system, so dev, cd into dev, enter. So I'm there, ls, I'm a list of files there. So I'm going to find one that says SD1, which is right here, SD1. So I'm going to go cd. I'm actually not going to do cd into it because I'm not able to get into it. What I am going to do, on the other hand, is I'm going to there's a program called LSBLK. This lists the hard drive information, the size about the different hard drives in our instance. So LSBLK is the command followed by SDA1. So this lists the actual size of the actual hard drive. So it's a SDA1. The size is 512 meg. The partition, it's a partition, and the mount point is boot EFI. If I wanted to as a whole to find out all of the drives listed, I would type the command LSBLK, enter. And this is going to give me all of the different partitions here that are listed. So for instance, you see here you have the SDA5. So we click on over here to our disk, partition our disk here. We see that we have two different file system structures. You have the SDA1, which is right here, SDA1, and then you have the SDA5. If I click on SDA5, you notice it's changed here, SDA5, and the extended partition, which doesn't have any information in it. So the partition for SDA5, you'll notice it has similar here, 49.5 gig is the size, and roughly 23% full, roughly. The next directory we're going to look at, we're going to cd into this, cd backspace. So we're going to pwd, where are we at? We're in root, okay. ls again. The next one is going to be the etc. So we're going to cd into atc, enter, ls. So etc contains the system configuration files stored in, it's basically storing everything from maybe the user passwords, the system information, screen resolution, the operating system, network interfaces, etc., etc. Let's actually find out a little bit here. So more importantly, let's do cd into. We'll type, say, cat, which is going to view a certain command in etc. And we're going to look at the network interfaces, actually, right? So we're going to do cat, then we're already in etc here, so we're going to just do cat followed by slash, and then we're going to tab it through. We're going to first type this first word, which is going to be network, NET, tab it through. Nothing listed, okay. So how about this? Just CNAT, nothing listed. How about cat etc network? Nothing listed. Okay, here we go. Network. So we have our networks. So we'll type in network, networks, or network slash. Then let's tab it through. What do we show here? We have our interfaces. So what I've done essentially is I've looked for a setting on in my etc folder, etc folder. Again, stands for, these are basically like your text files. They can be viewed with a text editor or something like that. And roughly these are equivalent of the entries like the INI files you'd find in the Windows operating system. For instance, in our case, we're going to look at the network interfaces here. So the cat, which cat stands for, CAT right here, cat stands for to view, essentially. You're going to view whatever these files are. So we're in a cat. We're going to go into our folder, which is etc, and then we're going to go into network. And then when we push the tab button. When we tab it through, it's going to list what's currently in there. So this gives us a good functionality here. So if we just type in interfaces, interfaces, tab it through again, we notice that's all we have. Now if we push enter, it's going to display a notepad type of display. It's going to tell us information about our interfaces. Actually, here we go, .d. It's the directory. Why is it not letting me show it? Cat.d. The next thing to show is where are we at first of all, pwd. We're in the root directory. Now anytime you want to clear your screen a little bit, so you have a bunch of text here, you're like, okay, I want to get back top, clear it. You're going to type command CLEAR, clear that screen. So I'm going to go into LS, and I want to talk about the etc folder, etc folder. So the etc folder contains, it's similar to that of Windows, meaning it has the INI folders. So this has the information, so these are usually text files usually. It has information about how the Linux Mint is connecting to, say, for instance, the interfaces, the network interfaces, for instance, right? Let's go into it. CD space / etc. We're coming into, again, CD stands for change directory. So now we're in the etc folder. We're going to type ls. Now you see there are hundreds and hundreds of different items, different configuration files, different items that are present for you to manipulate, monitor, adjust, etc. So there's one that I want to look importantly, and that is you're most likely going to have to change this when you're doing the Linux portion, for when you get involved more in the Linux portion. And that is the network interfaces, right? So we go cd change directory. We're going to type in etc, even though you're in etc already. You're going to type in then networks. We're going to tab it through if we want to find the command network, okay, network, / and then interfaces.d. So this is the actual interface. This is the interface's information that you're going to be either editing or you're going to be changing when you maybe troubleshooting an issue with your networks. You're going to be changing this, either this file or this file. Most likely you're going to change those two when you're editing network issues on your Linux Mint or Linux server for that matter. The next command is, or the next directory, let's go cd back one, go into root, pwd, where are we at? Okay, we're in the root directory. So ls again, now this is the home directory. Now it's very similar to that. Actually, it's the same exact thing. If you click on menu, then you click on the files, it's the same exact thing as the home button right here on the left hand side. So in your home directory here, you're going to see desktop documents, downloads, music, etc. Same thing with here. If I cd into home and I type ls, I see that I have a Linux Mint course. So from this Linux Mint course, again, the same thing as I saw here, Linux Mint, click on Linux Mint, home Linux Mint, and then if I go in a little bit further, I'll see those other files. So if I cd in again, Linux Mint, ls, you see the files that are present that I had mentioned. So this is a home directory usually is for user accounts, for like personal information, personal files, downloads, music, pictures. This is typically where you store everything like you're working on, maybe your documents, your images, your media files. We're in our home directory again, so we type pwd. We're root again, so ls. The next one to look at is library, lib. Okay, so cd into lib, ls. The library directory contains 32-bit, not 64-bit, that's 64, but it contains 32-bit files that are used, like executable files for the, like the bin and sbin are using directories. So they're like shared libraries essentially, almost like your DLL files in your Windows system, library system. So we go back one, we go CD backspace, and we do ls again, and we see we have lib32, lib64, and libx32. The lib64 is very similar to that in the lib32, that it has files that are used for the bin and sbin that are for 60-bit directories. Let's clear our screen here, clear, and type ls. Control C, ls. Now we're going to type in cd lost and found, lost and found. So the lost and found are maybe like files that are corrupted, files that are damaged that can't be recovered. You find them right here. This would be something like your temp folder, if you basically. It's not the same as a temp folder, but it's similar to that of a temp folder because you have a TMP folder as well. But it's very similar to like a file system structure that contains some files that are corrupted, or that haven't been recovered. The next thing to look at is we type ls, and this would be media. Media is a flash drive, a external device like an external drive that you would plug in. You would look at it here. So if we go in and type in cd